Hi, welcome everyone and welcome to our guests. I'm going to go ahead and start our Community Development Commission meeting for October 19th, 2022, starting at 3:33. And let's start off with a roll call.
Chair Villarreal,
Present.
Commissioner Torres, here, Commissioner,
Here.
Commissioner Padilla.
I am here.
Thank you. Commissioner Watkins.
Just right.
Yes.
And nobody else is on yet. So we'll have, I think the folks that are excused are Commissioner Lopez and Commissioner Marquez may jump on late, but we do have a quorum, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
your mic on your end, at least on my end, is coming in with a lot of warble behind it. I don't know if there is some adjustment on your mic that you can do, but just FYI.
Thank you. We have this, how about now? Is that better? We have this mega machine that I'm not sure what it does, but maybe keeps it cooler. Okay,
No, I think it's an air purifier.
it's an air purifier, so hopefully we all won't get COVID. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So. I
Much
think
better.
we're good. It was really noisy, so thank you for letting me know. I'm gonna go ahead and go to approval of the agenda. Were there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Madam Chair.
Any changes from members? Commissioners? None. All right, seeing none, what's
I move to approve the agenda.
got a motion from Commissioner Flores, second from Commissioner Hughes. Since we're on hybrid, let's do a roll call.
Madam Chair Villarreal,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Padilla.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting was August 24th, 2022. And were there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Madam Chair.
Any changes from the commissioners?
No changes. I wasn't here, so it's really interesting to see how these council, but I've never seen minutes that are verbatim.
We have a good stenographer among many talents.
Nice.
So it's helpful for folks that aren't able to tend to catch up.
That's
Were there any other from other members?
none here.
Okay, I just have a couple. If you go through the document, if you search MRA, the first one is on page 4 of 8 minutes. It says the director Ladd at the top, it says the MRA. I think it'd just be helpful to spell that out. It's Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency. And then when you go through the document on that same page, it says MRI. So if we could just change that to MRA. And then the next page, again, there's MRI on page 5, where I say, Alex, do you know anything about how, I should say the MRA would be structured? And let's see, on page 6 of the minutes, in the second paragraph where I'm quoted, it's after South Meadows, it says that's been challenging. We were thinking of other ways with that trail system. And then it says it packages things you said, and I'm not sure what that meant, because I don't think I said that. So I don't know if we could check the minute or the recording or just take it out. I was trying to figure out if there was something it could have changed. And then a little bit down, almost towards the bottom, Councilwoman Villarreal, it says after the rezoning in parallel with the, and it didn't finish. So I don't remember what it was, but maybe we could just get the wording. And then Director Ladd said the governing body will approve both together. So I don't know what it could have been after the rezoning in parallel with the No,
So the governing body, it's about Midtown, will approve the master plan.
it's just that my quote was if not completed, it just trailed off, so whatever I said, I don't remember. So if you could just complete that sentence, and I think we should be good.
Okay.
And then matters from the chair on page 7. That last paragraph, it's just a, I think a typo. Right after matters from the chair, I speak, then Director Ladd speaks, and then I speak, and at the end of that paragraph, it says we need further in depth. It should say in depth instead of in the. pardon? In depth, and I think, oh, one more. At the, on page 8 of 8 at the end, second to last paragraph. Where I'm saying if there's any other ideas that comes to us, please email us. And it says, in the past, we tried instead of tired. In the past, we tried to, and then we were pressed for time. And I think that's it.
The only thing that I'm wondering about is whether it should say Director Ladd will play the role of Daniel Hernandez. It'd be better if it said,
Why was I doing so much talking? in
it
this
would
meeting?
say Director Ladd will, give a report for Daniel or something different, but I don't know.
What page is that on?
It's on the minutes, on the second top. Before approval of the minutes. After approval of the agenda,
Oh,
then you go to the next page, the other side, and it says, note, Director Ladd will play the role of Daniel Hernandez.
all right.
Oh, Yeah,
Sorry, we haven't had this much fun with no minutes before, so yes, if we could just say Director Ladd will cover for.
The
Daniel
information for Daniel Hernandez report or something like that. Otherwise, we're in a play.
I was embodying my inner Daniel when I was talking.
All right, that's great. Any other changes? If not, can I get a motion?
Well, there's one here with Watkins. Did you see that? We have land trust. Is that one on your,
What page is that?
the page 7 at the bottom? Under Commissioner Watkins?
That one is finished too.
Yeah.
We have land trust. Is that one on your, I think it was on your list? Any other changes? All right,
Well, there's another together, the one we're a part of.
yes, we got that. Okay, yeah. Any other changes? If not, let's can get a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
Right,
Commissioner Padilla, second.
All right, Commissioner Padilla, second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Madam Chair, Diana?
Yes.
Commissioner Torres? Yes. Commissioner Watkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Commissioner Padilla?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we don't have any discussion items, and so we'll move on to presentations. Our first presentation is Shared Equity Housing and Community Land Trust Model, Promising Practices from Around the US, and we have, I believe, 2 guests with us today, Jason Webb and Jerusha Daniels from Grounded Solutions Network. I hope I said your names correctly. Excellent, and I don't know if you want to go ahead and if there was anything staff wanted to start off with, or we could jump into the presentation.
Let's jump in.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you all for the invitation and share a little bit about what we do at Grounded Solutions Network and also about some of these models and how other cities have been able to partner with these types of entities. So just want to check and make sure everybody can see the presentation.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
perfect. I've done a few presentations where I'm in like 5 slides and folks are like, what presentation? So here at Grounded Solutions Network, we're a national membership-based organization. We seek to cultivate communities that are rich in opportunity and also are equitable and inclusion by advancing affordable housing solutions that last for generations. I am presenting today with my colleague, Jerusha Daniels. Jerusha, do you want to do a quick intro? You're muted.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Jerusha Daniels, and I work with Jason very closely at Grounded Solutions. I'm the Affordable Housing Senior Specialist. And I am proud to say I am a Logo. I graduated from University New Mexico years ago now, but New Mexico and Santa Fe have a special place in my heart. So it's nice to be here full circle talking about land trust.
Thanks, Jerusha. And I am Jason Webb. I am the Community and Technical Assistance Principal here at Grounded Solutions Network. I come to this work with over 30 years of experience working with CLTs, community development, and community organizing. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, had the privilege of leading one of the largest urban community land trusts, which is Dudley Neighbors Incorporated, for about 15 years as the director. And I also served 10 years on their board of directors. I started off young in this work. And here at Grounded Solutions, I work specifically with startup community land trust, but I'm also the lead technical assistance on most of our engagements. Just as a part of sort of recap of where community land trusts sort of stand in the larger field of what is sometimes called shared equity. And we love to think about shared equity as a part of also a bigger ecosystem that's called lasting affordable housing, that is broken up into rental housing that has lasting affordability built into it, and then shared equity home ownership that is broken into two different types of programs. One is unrestricted programs, and those are more commonly known as resident-owned communities. And then other programs that have resale restricted pieces and deed restricted homes, shared equity programs, community land trust, and limited equity co-ops are all different models that we are experts at here at Grounded Solutions. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into community land trust, but a lot of folks will usually ask the question, well, where does community land trust fit in this? And the bigger umbrella of lasting affordability, and we always love to clear up some of the confusion that community land trust can do anything with lasting affordability tied to it. I always love to say anything that you can do with real estate, you can go ahead and layer on a community land trust. And a lot of it is the fact that most of them are organized as nonprofit organizations. They're all dedicated to the idea of community control. The land itself is what is forever in their trust. And that CLTs are not synonymous with shared equity home ownership programs. Now, with inside shared equity programs, they are always trying to balance these needs of supporting homeowners, wealth creation, and affordability. How the individual wants wealth creation, a lot of times the community wants more affordability. Individuals have to deal with some of the risk and some of the rewards that come with being a homeowner. Just quickly, as we think about shared equity, here is how we at Grounded Solutions define shared equity, that it has to have an affordability compliance period of at least 30 years. that it is secured by a legal agreement, whether that is a ground lease or whether that is a model or whether that is a deed restriction. And it actually, that affordability compliance period renews upon resale. And it includes a first right of refusal for the program to actually purchase the unit if it is being sold. And it does not include any buyout options. So this is how we would define shared equity housing, specifically home ownership. Here are some of the more commonly known subsidy sources around sort of creating initial affordability in housing. As all of you know, by sitting on this committee, federal funds, housing trust funds, having public land as an overall subsidy to be put into a project, and then also leveraging what can be in a number of states somewhat controversial inclusionary housing policies. The idea of maintaining this affordability is the fact that for shared equity housing, they have resale restrictions. And these resale restrictions are designed in a way to lower the price initially for the first homeowner, keep that price lower than where the market is upon resale, and that we're actually selling these homes over and over again. Some of the special factors that we have seen throughout the years of how things can actually come out of affordability has to deal with taxes, has to deal with sometimes HOA dues and assessments, sometimes stewardship fees, capital improvements, and repair and replacement costs. These are all what we would say are factors that should also be thought about when you think about affordability. One of the pieces around shared equity that makes it incredibly important is this idea of stewardship, that no matter what, the program is there as a partner with these homeowners as they go through this journey of being new homeowners. And it is a few of these ways that within inside the legal agreement that programs are looking at monitoring the mortgage insurance and tax payments, making sure that those things are being taken care of. Programs are able to figure out how to support and approve capital improvements and refinancing of the property. And that programs are able to build out homeowner education and foreclosure prevention. When we think about the idea of shared equity programs, here is where the size and scope of this is, where community land trusts are one part of it, but those other models make it where there are over 800 programs throughout the United States. They are collectively stewarding about 250,000 units. We have seen amazing growth in the 1990s about this type of model of shared equity, and that roughly they're in about 43 states, plus the District of Columbia and in Puerto Rico. Now I want us to dig a little bit deeper into specifically about the community land trust model. And one of the things I always love to talk about is where does this model come from? What are the roots? For this presentation, we have consolidated the roots into a short version. We actually have a 6-hour training, but unfortunately we don't have that deep amount of time to go through all of the different branches and all of the roots that make up this unique model. Here is our simple version as we trace back all of the roots of the community land trust. And one of the things to get out of this sort of diagram here is that while the community land trust model is right now about 53 years old, it has been actually touched upon and influenced by a number of different movements throughout the United States and also throughout the world. Some of them are the US Civil Rights Movement. the peace movement, the single tax movement, and even the Grandam movement over in India. The roots of the community land trust here in the United States actually trace back to 1968, when an American delegation actually traveled to India to actually study the Musha model, and were so impressed by that model that combined individual homesteads with cooperative farming on leased land. This American delegation actually came back and started to rewrite a new model and a new blueprint of land tenureship, specifically for African American farmers in the Deep South. They understood that if they were going to create a new model of land tenureship, that they needed to bring together a broad coalition of individuals and leaders that would support this new idea. Here are some of those leaders that were a part of that American delegation that went over to India and were a part of the early beginnings of the community land trust model here in the United States. Two of the individuals, Slater King and Bob Swan, continue to be puzzled by what Gandhi also ran across in India about this idea of what happens after the protest. How can you actually move a protest movement into a constructive movement? Slater King, Bob Swan, and a number of allies went ahead and forged to create the first community land trust that was here in the United States in 1969 in the Deep South of Georgia. Along with New Communities, Inc., a number of other early community land trusts were also formed. From the Woodland Community Land Trust in Tennessee, the Covenant Community Land Trust in Buckshot, Maine, and then also the first urban community land trust that was actually established in Cincinnati in 1981. Just as a refresher for everyone, here are some of the basics of what constitutes a community land trust. Our founders were very clear that when they created this model, they created this model with three core elements. One of them was around membership and governance. The other one was how do you hold land, and now specifically subsidy, in trust? And then how do we continue to be that developer that doesn't go away by being a good steward of helping these new homeowners be the best homeowners that they can be? To have a community land trust, according to our founders of this model, you need to have all three core elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with unpacking what does it look like to be a community land trust, and talk a little bit about how other municipalities have played a pivotal role in the success of these models working in their cities. But in general, a community land trust organization acquires, owns, and stewards land permanently for the common good. Community land trusts acquire land in a number of different ways. They can purchase land on the open market, they can receive land donations, or they can partner with city agencies, land banks, and other entities to purchase land at a discounted rate. No matter what, however, once the land enters the community land trust portfolio, it remains in their portfolio forever and is never sold. As a community land trust acquires land, it thinks about that end purpose of each parcel. The community land trust can put land to a number of different uses, but is most commonly known for its work around affordable homeownership opportunities to provide households that have been excluded from the regular market. In real estate, we often ask, what is the highest and best use of a property? And we answer that question by considering how much money we can actually get from the property. Community land trust, though, on the other hand, asks, what is our community's greatest need and then pursue those opportunities within reason. In addition to providing affordable home ownership opportunities, anything with real estate you can go ahead and do on a community land trust, including commercial spaces, community spaces, agricultural spaces, multifamily, and also even just straight rental. The Community Land Trust as an organization is an independent nonprofit organization that defines and serves a certain geographic area, typically a neighborhood. Membership is open to anyone within inside of that defined service area. This is actually one of the elements that makes the Community Land Trust unique. Instead of just serving the direct beneficiaries, those living or working on land trust land, the Community Land Trust is accountable to their entire membership and to the entire community. Community Land Trusts have a very unique board structure. It's most commonly known as a tripartite board structure. The first third is made up of community members. The second third is made up of people or entities that are leasing land from the Community Land Trust, known as leaseholders. And the third third is made up of technical experts. Because 2/3 of the board are made up of community members, this is the reason why we say that Community Land Trust organizations are community controlled and owned organizations, because the majority of the board are community members. Community Land Trusts go ahead and actually deploy a very unique structure of owning property with homeowners called a dual ownership model, in order to secure the property for the common good and to secure the ongoing affordability. In this dual ownership structure, the individual, most frequently a low-income home buyer, purchases and owns just the improvements, basically the house. The Community Land Trust retains ownership of the land underneath that home. A 99-year ground lease ties the improvements and the land together. This ground lease does a couple of critical things. First, it outlines the rights and responsibilities of the homeowners and the rights and responsibilities of the Community Land Trust. Second, it establishes use restrictions, like requiring that the homeowner to live in the property as their primary residence. And then third, it establishes affordability restrictions. Permanent affordability restrictions are what set Community Land Trusts apart from other forms of affordable housing development. Community Land Trusts ensure that every home that's developed is not just affordable for the first occupant, but for future generations as well. They do this by removing the land and the home from the regular market. They resell the same home over and over again. And they use this idea of resale restrictions. Community Land Trusts use public subsidies to lower the initial price of the home to a level that is affordable to the target home buyer. They can do this in a number of different ways. They can use the public resources to subsidize the cost of the construction or acquisition of the property, or they can use these subsidies to help a home buyer purchase a home on the existing market. But no matter how they do it, by bringing the home into the trust, they, one, remove it from the regular market. Let's remember, Community Land Trusts never sell the land that they acquire, and therefore resell the same home over and over again. When an eligible home buyer goes ahead and purchases the Community Land Trust home, they sign the ground lease that upfront will outline how the resale will work, including the maximum sale price and the eligibility factors for subsequent buyers. When the subsequent buyer purchases the home, they go ahead and sign the ground lease and agree to sell at a resale restricted price. And this process happens again and again and again. The best way to actually talk about this is to go through a scenario of how this would work. So as we know, most affordable housing projects are always trying to figure out how can we actually, how can we close the affordability gap? The affordability gap is the difference between what the market price of the home is and what the family can afford to buy a home. In this example, we have a market price of 200,000, but the family can only afford 155. That means our affordability gap is $45,000. And unfortunately, in many communities where the market value increases at a faster rate than income, this affordability gap is neither going to stay the same, nor is it going to decline. It's actually going to do the opposite. It's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And that's why it raises a number of public policy questions. For example, given limited amount of resources and growing amounts of subsidy needed, will programs choose to serve fewer households? Or will they choose to serve the same number of households, but with fewer resources, meaning that they'll need to serve a higher income household to make the numbers work? Neither option is really optimal. And what we're trying to talk about is forward-thinking solutions. The best way that I know how to unpack this is to go through a continuum and really compare and contrast how the community land trust actually compares to, let's say, a traditional model of, let's say, down payment assistance. In this fictional case, what we're going to talk through is this market price of $200,000, a buyer that can only afford 155, and a subsidy that's needed of $45,000. So for this example, we're going to structure this like a grant, like a down payment assistance grant, where we have no intention of this money to come back to the program. The homeowner is able to buy the home for $200,000 because we're coming in with a down payment assistance grant of $45,000. There is no deed restriction. It's basically a grant that is set up. So 10 years later, this homeowner wants to go ahead and sell their home. And the market has appreciated to $240,000. So this is what the sale price that they're going to be able to do. But since the program that made the home affordable in the first place set it up as a grant-based down payment assistance program, no money is coming back to the program. So it stays with that seller. They actually get an above market rate of return on their investment. They get $40,000 in appreciation plus the $45,000 grant. This is on top of their own equity, like their original down payment and any principal pay down of their original mortgage. But as we know, the need for affordable home ownership opportunities hasn't gone away. So we're trying to work with another family that may need a home. So it's 10 years later, the program needs to help a new family purchase a new home on the market. So in this example, the price is now $240,000 and the family can only afford $185,000. But in many markets, the increase in incomes, as we know, cannot keep up with the increase in home values. So now there's a new gap of $55,000 that the program needs to come up with to help this second family go ahead and to purchase this home. If this was our only way of creating affordable home ownership opportunities, we would need an ever-growing pot of subsidy, and it is unlikely that we will ever make a real meaningful dent in the community's affordable housing need. But let's take a look at this compared to how the CLT modeled is structurally works in a fundamentally different way. In this example, we have the same home buyer, same $45,000 gap. But instead of providing a grant to the homeowner, we're going to go ahead and we're going to invest that $45,000 in writing down the cost of the home through land donations and construction subsidies to the community land trust. So the home buyer is purchasing the home from the CLT for the below market rate of 155. 10 years later, our home is still increased in market value, but the community land trust homeowner cannot sell for that market value of the house. They sell to an agreed upon resale restricted price of 185,000. In this example, I'm using a fictional resale formula that is escalating the original purchase price by 2% per year. It is designed to track changes in income as opposed to changes in the market. The program portion actually grows to $55,000, which is the difference between the resale value and the market value. And it stays in the home to assist that next buyer to purchase this home. The seller walks away with $30,000 plus any equity like their original down payment and any principal pay down of their mortgage. But let's take a look at how this looks like from the perspective of the next buyer. And the key difference is for the community land trust model, as we are reselling the same home as opposed to trying to purchase a new home on the market. So instead of the needing to help a buyer purchase a $240,000 home on the market, the community land trust helps them purchase the resale restricted home of 185. Magically, or because of fantastic program design, 185,000 is exactly what the new home buyer can afford. But let's remember, I chose to peg my resale formula to the changes in income rather than the market. So this outcome is actually not really surprising. Community land trusts don't need to go ahead and invest any new money into this subsequent buyer. This is how community land trusts maximize this public investment. They put them to work for generation after generation of low-income home buyers. Now, I've been doing this work for a very long time, and I know that, you know, in the real world, it's not as neat and clean as this example, but hopefully you're seeing the difference between these two models and what can be possible. So community land trusts are also known as promising to make the home permanently affordable. Actually does not result in the home being permanently affordable. That requires oversight and support that falls under a broad category called stewardship. Community land trusts go ahead and do three kinds of stewardship at once. One, they steward the home itself. If the home is to remain affordable, it needs to remain in good condition. So community land trusts will do things like require the home have adequate insurance and approve all substantial improvements or renovations to the property. But they also do things like educate homeowners about preventative maintenance items, encourage capital improvements, help homeowners through renovations to prevent contractor fraud. Community land trusts, while they're stewarding the homes, they're also stewarding the homeowners. While homeowners are not able to sell for the full market value of their home, community land trusts try to design the resale formula that balances this ongoing affordability with wealth creation. And we know that homeowners, to be able to realize wealth creation, they can't just obtain home ownership. They need to actually retain it over time. So community land trusts will do things like require homebuyer counseling before you purchase the home. They'll also review all the mortgage and finance documents to prevent predatory lending. In some cases, community land trusts will also offer post-purchase counseling and foreclosure prevention to help bolster homeowners. And then finally, as they're stewarding these two things, the last thing they're stewarding are public funds that are used to make the homes affordable in the first place. Every community land trust makes a promise that the funds will serve generation after generation of homeowners. And the key to that success has been resale restrictions. So to make good on that promise, community land trusts oversee every element of the resale, including calculating the formula price, income certifying that next home buyer. Community land trusts are born out of the community that they serve. Their creation is inspired by local needs, their strategies informed by community stakeholders, and their operations are guided by the public good. But their success greatly hinges on the support of local government leaders and actors. Here on the screen are two reports that have been done over the time that we've had the privilege of partnering with the Lincoln Land Institute for Land Policy and the National League of Cities to continue to promote the idea that government has an important role to play when community land trusts want to be started. Here are a number of ways that cities have been extremely helpful, and then we'll go through some specific examples of how cities have really been able to be that pivotal hinge for the success. Providing startup funding, ensuring that the project has enough either land or subsidy for a project pipeline. We've had cities that would hire consultants like Grounded Solutions to come in and actually work with the CLT on business plans or on starting up their operations. The important thing is that cities play a huge role in funding affordable housing. And there are some cities that will prioritize that lasting affordability that community land trusts bring. The last thing that governments have been really, really important on is understanding that taxing of community land trust property is a little bit different than just taxing a market rate home. Because of the resale restrictions that are involved, sometimes cities have to look at that and take that into account when they're doing their assessments for taxation. Here are some of the examples of community land trust partnership with government, and then I would love to open it up for question and answers. So the first place that we're going to travel to is actually Portland or Oregon. In Portland, Oregon, there is a community land trust there by the name of Proud Ground. And Proud Ground was able to partner with their city, and their city was able to leverage a number of different things for them. They were able to leverage multi-year operating support. They were able to go ahead and donate tax foreclosed property to their land trust. They were able to go ahead and make sure that within side of requests for proposals, that there were some advantages of thinking about long-term affordability projects that would get more points. The city went ahead and actually put some of their CDBG, their NSP dollars, and their TIF dollars directly to the community land trust. And also the city was able to waive some of the impact fees that were a part of their developments. So that's at least one of the examples of how Portland, Oregon was able to work with their community land trust. The next one is actually in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the community land trust there, the City of Lakes Community Land Trust, was also able to really form a really tight partnership with their local government, where the city went ahead and gave them $25,000 for them to get off the ground. They were able to go ahead and actually be able to do direct housing subsidy of 30-year interest-free deferred loans to the CLT for some of their bigger projects. Again, the city was able to go ahead and direct land subsidy to write down the cost of land that they were trying to acquire. The city allowed the CLT to charge a marketing fee that would be revenue that would come into their community land trust. And then lastly, the city created RFP points that would give the CLT a more competitive edge in being awarded funding because the long-term affordability was beyond 30 years. Now we will travel to my hometown of Boston, where I get to show off our partnership with our city. And what our city was able to do was go ahead and actually provide 15 acres of vacant land that was city-owned to the Community Land Trust. The city went ahead and also was our bank and did all of the startup construction financing for our first 36 home ownership units. Ongoing, the city has been able to leverage about $100,000 of construction subsidy per unit. And currently, right now, our land trust has over 250 units in its portfolio. Again, the city allows the CLT to charge that marketing fee. And they also had the ability of RFP points that weigh the idea of the CLT doing projects in our catchment area. And here is a small glimpse of what our Community Land Trust was able to do with the city. And again, these were some of our first developments of 36 home ownership units. And in the back was a 44-unit cooperative development that we worked with the city on developing. All of these properties are on our Community Land Trust that was once city-owned vacant land. And in your neck of the woods, you know, the Community Land Trust that has been around the oldest is out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And Sawmill has done an amazing job with their city with the support of the redevelopment of the 24 contiguous acres of land. They were also able in the very beginning, able to give them a $200,000 annual grant for operating. They would allow the CLT to charge a marketing fee. And when RFPs came out, the city went ahead and sort of allowed for additional points if the Community Land Trust was involved. And here is sort of what their initial master plan was for that 34 continuous acres. So those are just some of the examples of how some cities have been able to work with their Community Land Trust. I'm going to stop sharing and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. So this was a lot of information. I think it would also be helpful to send us the slides.
We
Because I
will.
was rigorously to try to document some of the things you were saying. And I think it'll just be helpful for all the members and staff to be able to have that. Thank you so much. I don't know if Jerusha wanted to add anything or we just jump into questions. Okay.
Go ahead and jump into questions.
All right, so any of the members have any specific questions or? Commissioner Totus?
Would you agree that this model helps reduce gentrification or eliminate it altogether? And that's a benefit, a cost benefit to the entire community?
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I know that for my own community in Boston, Massachusetts, while we were not able to eliminate true gentrification, because we had the Community Land Trust model, we were able to manage how that gentrification came into our community. The city gave us 15 acres of land. The Community Land Trust bought an additional 15 acres of land. So we owned half of the community. And that was a huge piece of being able to say what was going to happen in our own community was because the community collectively owned, 50% of that land mass.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Hughes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've been a real fan of these land trusts for years and love going down to see the one in Albuquerque. It's so great. particularly the food court there, when you come and sit down here next time. That's a request. But I think obviously we're going to hear about Midtown next, and then the question is this relevant or applicable? Potentially to location?
Yeah, so we've been briefed a little bit on Midtown, and it's one of those development opportunities, as you guys can also agree, doesn't come around every day. And how can you sort of protect some of those end uses that you guys and the community in general want to vision and want to place there? I could think of no better model than to have the community own the land and sort of control what that development's going to be, whether it is affordable housing or whether it is commercial space or community, amenities. Having the community ultimately control and own the land underneath it can actually make the community land trust a lot more sustainable through lease fees. And at the same time, have a level of protection that those uses can be more durable for generations to come.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? I have one or a couple. Did you say at the beginning, Grounded Solutions Network was a nonprofit?
Yes, we're a national nonprofit membership-based organization.
And so I guess my question to you about the models across the country, are all of the models overseen, or the leadership is usually, or in most cases, a nonprofit? And have you seen other examples? I don't know if this is even an example, but if government entities actually running a community land trust, or is it always the nonprofits?
Yeah, according to our founders, the CLT model is embedded into a nonprofit structure. I would say that more of like a shared equity home ownership program is more of a model that is conducive for government, where you don't have that government oversight. I'm sorry, you don't have the community oversight and the community ownership. So one good example you could look at is the city of Chicago. And the city of Chicago initially tried to create a community land trust and realized, because the community kept saying to them, wait a minute, this model is about community control, but you guys control everything. We don't have any accountability back to this entity. And the Chicago Community Land Trust heard that and actually realized that they were actually marketing themselves when they were actually really a shared equity home ownership program, and changed their name starting this year as the Chicago Housing Land Trust, which is still a shared equity program. But they also wanted to pay respect to the civil rights founders of the CLT model by saying, no, we want to manage the expectation. We're focused on housing. And that's where we want to put our effort into, is keeping housing permanently affordable and not necessarily community building or community ownership, which more lends itself to the CLT model. But we see a number of governments starting up shared equity home ownership programs and being very supportive of how they do that. We also see a number of governments, as what a few of our examples are, where they're able to help set up the nonprofit organization and sort of help it out for the first few years once it gets off its feet and starts to do development.
Thank you. Thanks for that information. Thanks for the history too. I was fascinated by the origins of CLTs. I personally have so many other questions that I feel like we are running out of time though, because we do have another presentation, but were there questions on there's the chat says, this is from Tamara Bear. Hello, Tamara. She used to work with us at the city. can the CLT model apply to discontinuous parcels of land?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you're thinking about sort of the idea of scattered site, you can easily sort of have a CLT be a part of that. We have some community land trusts that are also like citywide that work really hard in making sure that the residents in the entire city are trying to be engaged with inside the community land trust. So that's something that can definitely sort of happen.
And I can add some information to that too. We have a nonprofit here that holds several homes in trust. So the nonprofit holds the land, and the home buyer was able to buy the house at a greatly subsidized sales price because the value is held by the nonprofit, the Santa Fe Community Housing Trust. And so, they didn't show up in your map, but Jason, if I wanted to see if any of we have some of our legal team on this call, because they were all interested in kind of understanding better the ramifications legally for using a land trust model at Midtown or other places. So I wanted to see if any of them had any specific questions on that level. And I just wanted to comment what was interesting to me, and I'm not sure, you talked a lot about marketing fees. And I'm not totally sure what those are, but I also just thought that brings up a really interesting topic that I think a lot of people who the trust model is very appealing to, but it's also, it has to be a business model. It has to be able to pay for itself in order to continue subsidizing the ongoing either development or resales of homes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why when we help groups start up a CLT, after the educational pieces, we dive into feasibility and business planning. And that's one of our deliverables that we will deliver to a group is a 5-year business plan. What does that look like? What commitments can they get from the city? Because we do feel like community land trusts are an extension of government, that they are trying to, fulfill a role that sort of government plays in, and that is to provide affordable housing for its constituents. So it is one of those tools that a number of other governments have been saying, how can we build it into our budget to actually be able to help this CLT with at least a base of funding every year. This happens actually in the city of Baltimore, Maryland, where their Affordable Housing Trust every year puts out a notice of fund availability that's only for community land trust, and they offer up $100,000 of operating funds for them. So then these CLTs are also not in the pressure of trying to chase a project that may or may not work out, but they're chasing it because they need to get the funding so that they can get their developer fee or their operating fee. The city of Baltimore said, no, we're not going to put them on a hamster wheel and have them keep spinning in one place. We have funds that we can dedicate to help them with their operating. And that's what that commitment has been, is every year there's approximately 7 different CLTs in the city of Baltimore, and that they actually have a budget line item where they can get that support.
That's helpful. Did anyone on the screen, any of the other city staff want to ask any questions? No questions.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So going back to the marketing fee that's allowed, so are you saying that the city subsidizes that marketing fee or pays it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
either the city pays it or the city allows for that marketing fee to be built into the project. Because we all know that developers put a line item down usually for marketing. For a number of these developments that CLTs play a role in, because the CLT has to do very unique marketing because of this abnormal sort of home ownership structure, the city says, no, you're allowed to do a marketing fee because you are marketing these units.
Thank you, Susan. I don't know if there's any other questions. I want to make sure we have time for the next presentation. I think it would be helpful later on to talk about like lessons learned and what has been a challenge for these kind of projects. But I did want to know, is your entity then one that provides consulting to startup CLTs? across the-
We do. So both Jerusha and I were on our technical assistance group here at Grounded Solutions. So we're sort of deployed throughout the country to work with either nonprofits or work with cities as they are sort of looking at these strategies. And if they want to go ahead and develop one, we have a toolkit that we bring to bear. And we also do this in a phased approach. So we have four specific phases in how we do our technical assistance. One is about education. The next one is about feasibility and business planning. The third one is around program design. And the fourth one is around overall launching support and ongoing coaching.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Given the time, we're going to move on to the next item. And Jerusha, can you tell us again what your title was? Because I didn't catch that at the beginning.
Affordable Housing Senior Specialist.
Thank you both for your
Thank
time and
you.
expertise, and we'll be hopefully in touch.
Okay. Thank you all.
You can stay if you want for the next presentation. And I will go ahead and introduce Lee Logston, who's our staff person. What's your official title now? Midtown Asset Development Manager?
That's what they call me. Yes.
Coming from the route of land use. He was also land use planner, would you say?
Yes. Okay,
So,
thank you. Thank you, Councilor VRL and members of the commission. It's the first time I've been in front of this commission, so I'm honored to do so. I was asked to give primarily just a quick overview, and I have no visuals for you. Sorry, I don't know that they're necessary. But just to give a quick overview of what the master plan itself actually is and what the application is that we're taking to the Planning Commission tomorrow. It's actually, so we talk about it as the Midtown, the Planning Commission is going to hear the Midtown Master Plan. It's actually a package of different applications. There are 6 different cases here, 6 different land use decisions that we need, or approvals we need to get in order to implement this master plan. And I won't bore you with the details, but just briefly, that is a general plan amendment for the underlying land because it's not currently future land use designated for anything mixed use. We need to do a rezoning. Believe it or not, the current zoning of the Midtown campus is R5 residential. And so we're going to change that to C2 general commercial planned unit development. The planned unit development is the unique standards that are in the master plan. We need to do a text amendment to the Midtown Link overlay district in order to accommodate the fact that Midtown will have its own unique standards. And then of course, there's the master plan itself. And then associated with that are two smaller applications that the staff was given direction to pursue also under resolution 2022-12, which was to pursue land swaps with some of the adjacent state-owned property. So we are working with the state to swap out land elsewhere in the city for them. And we are doing the same general plan amendment and rezoning for about 6 parcels that are mostly around the southern end of the Midtown campus and would basically extend the commercial zoning to Siringo Road. And now those properties themselves are not part of this master plan, but we're rezoning them in part for 2 reasons. One, to bring the current land uses on them in conformance with the zoning, but also to prepare for a future day where, those parcels could become something different. So we're not planning on that right now. It's not part of the master plan, but we're trying to extend zoning and kind of create a future where it's going to be easier to perhaps master plan those areas as well in the future, or at least develop them in a way that is complementary to Midtown. So we go to Planning Commission once again tomorrow night on that. Planning Commission makes a recommendation. They do not make any decisions regarding this. They just make a recommendation to the governing body. And if we, assuming a positive recommendation, then we hope to be in front of the governing body on November 9th. We do have a contingency plan in case the Planning Commission wants to take a second night. We can accommodate that. And in that case, we would go to governing body on November 30th. That in a nutshell is the process we're going through. I am happy to answer any questions about the master plan itself or the process that brought us here, but I just thought I would kind of give you an overview of what we're actually doing, and I figured, you know, the rest of it could come in questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Questions from the commission, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard the Finance Committee meeting the other day somewhat, and I think I heard that there will be 3 properties continue to be used. The other ones I assume are going to be torn down, is that correct?
No, there are, and I probably couldn't name them all right offhand, but there are, I believe, 6 buildings on the campus that are slated for reuse. They've been assessed and have either have community value, and the community through this public process has told us they want to see those remain. And that would include like the Visual Arts Center, the Fogelson Library Complex, and the Greer Garson Theater, actually 4 Garson Studios as well. So those are all buildings that the community has expressed they would like to see remain and be reused. And so those 4 are definitely staying. We've identified several others like St. Michael's Hall, Benildes Hall. There's another I just can't think of right now that are likely to be reused. So, but there are a number of buildings, the dorms, there are a number of buildings out there that need enough work. They were built like pre-ADA standards and built before modern fire codes. So like the dorms, for instance, like, well, what a great opportunity to create some affordable housing. Well, actually, they're concrete block construction with concrete block halls that are not ADA compliant. They have a communal kitchen rather than individual kitchens. They have no fire sprinklers. And if you really take an honest look at some of those dorm buildings, the cost involved, you know, there is that concept of embodied carbon, but the cost involved to actually convert those buildings and keep using them is so great that it just kind of makes more sense to demo them. So in any of the building, in the case of any building that would be demolished out there, that's effectively the deal. But Greer Garson Theater is among, and Garson Studios are among the first RFPs we're issuing, and the Visual Arts Center as well. So hopefully those buildings will get some good responses and see some life in those buildings in hopefully about a year's time, roughly. There is a long due diligence. There's the process of selecting the person or the entity that would get, that would win the RFP, and then they've got their due diligence and so forth. So there is a period of time before we'll see real activity out there.
Thank you for answering my question. My comment would be that when it comes down to the RFP being issued in new housing units, there be no waivers given for the 1 out of 6 homes be affordable. That we stipulate that be done, since the city's going to put in a lot of new infrastructure on their dime. I think it's only right that the private developers step up and provide affordable housing to build.
Yeah, the city. Or go ahead, Councilor. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay, Councilor Villarreal, members of the commission. Yeah, that is something that we are hearing from the community. It is our intent to make around 30 or at least 30% of the housing out there on the campus or the Midtown property be affordable. We intend to issue RFPs for a housing component that would be 100% affordable. There is discussion among, counselors, should we do away with fee in lieu of altogether? And I think Alexandra Ladd could address this better than me if we want to go further into this, but we feel that we want to retain the ability to use fee in lieu as needed, and we can use those fees in other beneficial ways at the campus. Also, there are, at a very basic level, us owning the land allows us to ensure affordability. So that is being discussed, whether we condition that, there's no fee in lieu, but the Office of Affordable Housing feels like it's yet another tool we need in our toolkit in order to really achieve everything we're trying to out there. That's the best answer I can give for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Alex?
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. I think Jason talked about this, using the weighted RFPs to leverage the benefit you want out of a land transaction. And because the city owns the land, we have that as this really amazing tool. So what we're looking at, rather than abolish the fee in lieu of, what we're talking about is using it as a leverage tool. So if we have a developer who comes in and says, I'm not in the business of affordable housing, I don't know how to do those rent restricted units, I don't think I can make it work. If I can pay a fee in lieu of, I can build here. And then the city can say, tell you what, we'll let you pay the fee in lieu of. We'll use the money over here to deepen affordability or to create even more affordable units over here. But in turn, because we're letting you do that, you'll create, and I'm making this up, we don't know what this will look like, but you will create a community benefit for us beyond what you were going to do. So your bottom floor of your building, part of it will be reserved for a childcare center, or you'll build the butterfly garden or the powwow grounds or whatever. So it's a tool for us. We might not end up doing it. We might not end up accepting the fee in lieu of, because with every RFP, we can control what we're willing to provide, to give, or to what we want to leverage out of it. So what we're saying is, rather than do this blanket, no, we're not going to allow it, because that's just going to tie our hands now. We want to be able to have that as a leverage. And then down the line, we may do the RFPs and say no fee in lieu for that site, no fee in lieu for that site. So it just gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Thanks.
And the reason why this came up is because Councilor Garcia and I have been exploring waiving the option for fee in lieu for the property, since it is owned by the city. And I think from our work, it's not because we don't know that the fee in lieu of is important. I think what I see is, like, we have people on waiting lists just to get into, to be able to use vouchers and to be able to use our down payment assistance and being able to use our rental assistance. So if they're on a waiting list, then how are we ever gonna have units to be able to have those folks in them? So I like what Alex is saying about options. I'm just trying to find a way that we can really commit to affordability and have actual units for people.
So we're going to do so much better producing units if we're doing it using a land trust, if we're doing it 100% subsidizing something, if we're leveraging tax credits. That's how we produce units. Because the problem with restricting the market, and this is the problem with the inclusionary zoning, right? It relies on the market. So when the market's great and developers are building, then they're producing units. But if we create such a restrictive development environment, they're not going to build anything. We're not going to get any affordables anyway. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's whatever percentage of 0 units is 0.
And is there a plan to really push forward to have Midtown have a community land trust? At least part of the land that we're designating as affordable housing?
The model we will follow is exactly what Jason was talking about. So we will wait these RFPs. So if you are proposing a land trust model, then which is going to happen a lot more if we actually have some operating dollars in our city budget to support that work. But that's exactly right. The city would say, you get it for free, we're gonna give you all the infrastructure, we're, and that's where we can leverage that kind of development, is through the RFP itself, not mandating it at this level. And the master plan really isn't going there at all. I sort of think of it as like the master plan is setting the table. And the community has told us they want soup, so we will have to make sure through the master plan, we put soup bowls on the table. But we're not deciding what kind of soup goes in the soup bowl yet, right? Like, that's what where the RFP comes in. 'Cause we'll say,
Base, you can really make sense.
right? But that's kind of to sort of understand like the level, like this master plan level is it's much more of a framework. Sorry, Lee, I barged in.
No, that's a great answer.
Thank you, Lee, I don't know if anyone else has any questions. I'm gonna actually hand it over to my colleague, Commissioner Torres, to run the rest of the meeting, because I have a quality of life meeting in 10 minutes that I have to drive to. So we just have a few more items, and if there's any other questions, please ask away. And I am going to speak to myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Any other questions, commissioners? Any other questions? Commissioner Padilla, any other questions?
Yes, I did have a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. In reference to the buildings, the more historic buildings out there, the AIA, our local chapter of the American Institute of Architects, had been pursuing historic status review of some of those buildings and inventory them to secure their status, secure and protect them, because we have some significant structures that were done by one of our architects that Philippe Register, that our Center for Architecture is named after, and wondering where we're at with any type of Lee, if you could update me with any type of understanding that you have for historic status or designation
Sure.
of those structures there at the campus. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Commissioner or Committee Member Padilla. That is on my to-do list. I'm a little chagrined that I haven't made progress at this point, but the city does intend to do we need to do a archaeological survey of the entire site, because that has never been done. And so approval of the master plan will be dependent on getting that. So that is required by our code. The historic survey is not, but it is something we absolutely intend to do, because we've heard that loud and clear from the community, whether it's from groups like yours or just from more general comments from members of the public that, those buildings mean a lot to me. They represent history. They're not necessarily thinking about significant architecture. They just want to see the buildings remain. So my point is that, we've heard loud and clear that people want us to do that survey. And so we do intend to get that done. We intend to have a historic cultural properties inventory, I believe you call it, HCPI, done for all the buildings that would remain on the campus, like full documentation of what's there and so forth. And that is something we will do. I would have liked to have had that stuff underway, but my plate is just kind of beyond full, even to the point where Alexandra had to remind me that I needed to be at this meeting today. I was just running around in circles. So I will be basically, as soon as the land use part of this dies down, which means getting across the, not necessarily across the finish line approved, but getting all the materials to governing body, my schedule will lighten up a bit after that. It's just like a desperate dash right now. And so I intend to get out, whether it's I don't know that it's an RFP, or if I think we'll be able to just do like a get 3 quotes kind of process with preferred vendors. I'm still learning all this stuff too in the city. And have that work done. And we are not in, because of the timeline of the RFPs as I said earlier, we're like a year out from any kind of real shovels turning. I mean, that's kind of the sad truth. Like on the one hand, you think, oh, great, we get it all approved, get the master plan in place, and now we're going to see stuff happen. And the reality is it's going to take a while. So we're in no danger of somebody coming to us with a proposal and wheels start turning and shovels start digging before this inventory is done. So
Great.
I'd love to tell you it's underway. It may not be totally satisfying that we're not even started, but we are committed to doing that.
Great. Thank you, Lee. Much appreciate that. And, and that's something that our local chapter has been advocating for a while now, and just wanted to make sure it stayed on the agenda for
Yes.
items for you to do, which I'm sure you got plenty of. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from Mr. Loxton? From anyone? Commissioners? Staff?
Thanks, Lee. That was really
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. I gotta go. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you. So matters from staff, are there any matters from staff? That's the next item.
Where should we begin? No, I think our next meeting on November 16th, we are gonna do a little bit of goal development for our next HUD plan, the next 5-year plan, consolidated plan, as well as our 5-year strategic plan. So I think, is our HUD consultant, did we talk to him about coming to that meeting or?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
He said good.
Okay, but we're gonna get we'll get some materials out for everyone to review and think about ahead of time. We have 4 goals that we've been using now for 10 years. I can't believe it. And they might need a little freshening up. So he's gonna get us some sample goals, and we'll have a little goal setting exercise, and then Commissioner Watkins, I can't even remember when you came on, but November is usually the meeting where we decide, do we have a specific funding priority for the upcoming year, the upcoming grants? Have things changed, or is there an emerging project that everyone's excited about? We kind of did that with that trail project, sort of mid-year, mid-funding process. But we'll have that conversation in November. So the November meeting is a lot of fun. And do you have anything else to add to that, Cody?
No, just looking at Jason's comment in the chat, that it'd be helpful if we were doing a CLT to build that into the plan so we can use
Very helpful.
our CDBG funds for it.
Yeah, that's great.
And we're talking about the master plan. Or this plan.
No, this would be the HUD consolidated plan, which is the 5-year plan. And every year we do the action plan, which is kind of a chapter of the consolidated plan. We update it every year. But that's a great idea, because if we can memorialize that in the consolidated plan, that means every year we can work on it. Because it might not happen in 1 year, but that's a great idea. Thank you, Jason.
And is there gonna be enough time for all of this in an afternoon meeting?
We might start it early if everyone's schedules will permit us. We wanted to get the meeting in before Thanksgiving, just seemed like a more productive time. But if it doesn't work, we can always do, I think what we did last year, we had a meeting in the first week of December.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other matters from staff?
Madam Chair.
Matters from the committee? Anything, John or Commissioner Watkins?
Thank you. No, you're gonna.
Oh.
Thank you for bringing this up. Some time ago, boy, June the 26th, and maybe you dealt with this in the interim, because I've been going almost all the time since then until a couple of days ago. I was sort of hoping to see a response to Santa Fe needs an activist housing authority paper, but maybe I missed it.
You didn't miss that.
Okay.
It's It's
And
in
I'm not-
draft form, but I actually wrote another article for the Western Planner that I think I'm gonna just be able to adapt and then do a, what do they call those? My view.
My view, great,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'm not trying to hassle you.
No,
I
I
know
know
you
you're
don't have very much to do, so I don't know why you're not finishing. But I think that would be interesting and help inform our discussion in November. as well,
Okay,
Because I'd like to.
Good goal.
Yeah. Then my second question is, and you probably will get mad at me for bringing this up again too. Uh, Vacant city and county owned parcels of land. We talked about this before. And I know that you guys are working on that or something. I think that was the response before. But again, if we're gonna start talking about land trust issues, particularly non-contiguous land trust possibilities, it seems like that would be a useful thing to
yeah,
about, along with what currently, I mean, I think currently properties that are gonna be sold for lack of payment of taxes or whatever, just get built on for sale. So could we include in that the possibility of those becoming city owned and
so the city doesn't have taxing authority over property tax. So when something is in arrears, it's going to the county, not the city.
so probably we could work with the county?
I don't know how they handle those properties. That would be a really interesting conversation. But yeah, the city, we don't have any jurisdiction over that, but we do, the Alto Street Habitat for Humanity project finally got the donation agreement signed. And they're gonna be breaking ground really soon, so that's super exciting, because that was the first, how do we write this RFP? How do we weight it to get what we want? And we got all, I think all 5 responses were strong in many ways, but the one we chose was like, they knocked it out of the park. So it'll be really fun to see how that project unfolds. We are in the final state, it's hard, the city owned property that's vacant is vacant for a reason, for the most part. It's either underused, but it's part of a beloved park, or, which is problematic from a neighbor's point of view, or it has some kind of crazy topography or infrastructure deficiency, or it's just kind of in a strange spot. You know, so we've got this big list of property, but each one, we're trying to just make sure, we don't want to put something out there that turns out to be a total dog.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you could never develop this because of whatever. So we're in the final phases of being, we finally have some staff in our asset management development office. So we're now able to kind of be a little more technical about it.
On the Alto Street, can you let us know when they're gonna start construction? I love to see the cranes put those
Yeah,
walls down.
absolutely.
Like a Lego set.
Yeah, so they still have to go and get their historic board approval for
Whatever.
their design. So it'll be a bit, but we're gonna be. Well, I was on the news the other night talking about it at the site. Yeah. So the city's very excited to track this one closely. This is fun. Yeah.
And I have one last, and this is just a personal request to fellow commissioners. I'm sure you all get just a jillion emails, as do I. And so in responding to Cody or whoever's sending information out, it would just really be helpful if people, instead of replying to all, just reply to Cody or whoever, unless it really affects all of us. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Agreed. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Watkins. John, did you have anything that you wanted? Yeah.
No, nothing at this time. Thank you.
Matters from the chair. I think she has nothing. And next meeting, November the 16th, at the same time, unless it's increased. the time is increased, then you'll let us know.
Well, yeah, we'll poll you and make sure everyone can fit it in and then work with the chair, because I can't remember. I don't think it's a quality of life meeting night, so we might be able to run late too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our meeting.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Yay, thanks again,
Thank
Jason.
you. And we adjourn.
We're
All right.
adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.